Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for The Expanse Season 5, Episode 5, Down and Out. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of The Expanse, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for The Expanse up to Season 5, Episode 5. If you have not seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video. Otherwise, some things will be spoiled for you. So, every time I say the title of this episode, Down and Out, I want to follow up by saying In Beverly Hills. Get it? It's like a movie that came out in the 80s. Anyway. I don't know why I remember that. Anyway, so this is a pretty good episode. It was a good follow-up to the sort of disaster. I knew we had that sucker punch of an episode that was relentless last week, so I knew that this week the episode was going to be sort of the follow-up to that, which was going to be a bit more sort of slow-paced and sort of just picking up the pieces of the aftermath, and that's what it needed to be. And it was still a pretty exciting episode in its own right. I guess I'll start with the Amos storyline, which was pretty tense. It was pretty much what we thought it would be. Amos and Clarissa having to work the way out of being so far underground, but as we saw, being so far underground is what saved them. And it is interesting to see that they're working with security officers, and Amos sort of throws his weight around and be like, I have friends in high places, in order to let them take Clarissa with him. And as we saw in the previous episode, and this is something I talked about, I think in a live discussion I did, where they showed this big, huge, muscular guy, like, you know, like lifting weights, and they were like, oh, he has all these mods in him. And it's like, there's no reason we're going to introduce this guy unless he was going to come into play. And of course, we see here he does come into play, where they use his strength to help them escape, which was a lot more difficult than they thought. The stairs is completely caved in, and the elevator didn't have a ladder, so they had to find another sort of hatch that had the ladder that climbed up, and even then they needed his strength to get everything open. And he, of course, is not a good dude, which they kind of alluded to in the previous episode. So he kills one of the guards first chance he gets, and he says, oh, he fell. And they knew he was full of shit, but they still needed him. And here's something I'm going to declare. Amos is now officially the Sawyer of the Expanse. And if you don't know what that's a reference to, it's a reference to the show Lost, where there was a character named Sawyer who had a different nickname for everyone he met. And it seems like Amos is doing that too. You know, like, it's something that's been going on for years, but it sort of just occurred to me when I was watching this episode. It's like, Amos is like Sawyer. I mean, because he called, can't think of all the ones. Well, Chrissy was the classic one we got a couple episodes ago, but even earlier seasons he called Anna Red. And of course he called Clarissa Peaches. Now he calls that big dude Tiny, and you know, he didn't take too kind to that. When he was calling him Tiny, I'm like, Amos is the Sawyer of the Expanse. So now that's official. So anyway, so yeah, and so once they climb up to the top, and the building is completely destroyed, and there's complete chaos around them, I gotta be honest, I was a bit disappointed that they didn't pan out and show like the whole world in chaos, but I suppose they didn't really have the money for that. They would probably have to use CGI. So fair enough. So they just kind of showed the immediate area where all the buildings were in ruin, and I love everyone's different reactions to this. Like the guards, of course, were in absolute shock, and they couldn't comprehend it. Where the muscular dude was just laughing his ass off. And while Amos and Clarissa are talking to one of the guards, while their back was turned, the muscular dude kills one of the guards, and when the other guard tries to stop him, he throws her gun down, so it looks fucked. So Amos attacks him, and Amos's punches do nothing. absolutely nothing to him. Because he's got all sorts of mods and whatever. And it's very really weird because Amos is usually always the strongest one in the room. He can always like kick anyone's ass. And so it's very strange to see him completely and utterly overpowered in this situation. But this is like, he has like military grade modifications that make him like super strength, basically. So he's like the Hulk, basically. But the guard uses the dead guard's gun because it's keyed to their DNA. That's something that they hinted at earlier, which is why Amos couldn't use the gun. But he puts it in the hand of the guard who's dead and uses his hand to pull the trigger and shoots him a couple times. And once he's wounded, Amos is able to do this badass suplex and chuck him down the elevator shaft, which was pretty badass. It's funny because Clarissa put on her, you saw her bite and to activate her modifications, but she wasn't even needed. And I kind of get the impression that because they mentioned before that because she was drugged out, her modifications wouldn't really work. So it seems like, I don't think they worked in this case, but they showed that she tried to use them, but they didn't really need it anyway because they sorted it. And then Amos convinces the surviving guard to, look, just go find your daughter. She's like, no, but the prisoner. And he's like, look, this fucking apocalypse. Everyone's dead. Go try to find your daughter. She's like, all right. Takes off. And so Amos and Clarissa now have to try to survive in this hellscape, which I'm very looking forward to seeing. So that was kind of your typical escape from prison type scenario, which was interesting enough. So, with Holden on Tycho, we see them questioning Sakai, and the guard who was guarding her apparently had beat the crap out of her, and Bull was all pissed off. He's like, God damn it, I don't pay you to think or whatever, and really pissed off that he was like, but she kept smiling at me. And you know what? I really sympathize with that guard because I probably feel the exact same way. I can't stand that character. I probably want to beat the crap out of her myself if I was that guard. But anywho, she is sort of, taunting them and refuses to give up any information and is like, oh, you Urters, you go back to the belt, to Urt. If you go out to the belt, we'll tell you where you don't belong over and over again. I'm like, shut up, God damn it. But it kind of reinforces the sort of prejudice and racism that exists. And how she didn't care about Fred Johnson. The fact that he devoted his life for the belt. He gave his life for the belt. He was so devoted to the belt, and it's like, he's just a tourist. I'm like, God damn it. What an ungrateful... Anyway. I swear I would have that same inclination as that guard did. Anyway, so... Holden's like, okay, gets the badass moment. It's time to take the Rossi out for a hunt. And she's like, oh, wait, Holden. I feel like when I watched this episode the second time, I feel like she's going to tell him, like, don't start the ship. It's going to explode. But then change your mind at the last second. It's like, okay, I'll be here when you get back. But I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that interpretation because... I don't think she would even have an inkling to warn him. I think she would be happy for him to blow up. So, I don't know, but it seems like that's how they were trying to play it. And if that's how they were trying to play it, I don't really buy it. But she is being smug because she knows that as soon as they try to start the Rocinante, it will explode. And so that takes us over to Naomi's storyline. Where, I mean, this is kind of frustrating to watch because you see everyone treat Naomi like shit, and she absolutely doesn't deserve it. And it's interesting hearing like Marco and Philip talk about how Naomi is like when Marco's talking to Phillips like, I know your mother treated you poorly. She was a bad mother. She did all those horrible things. She abandoned you. She's a horrible person. And I'm just thinking, actually, no, like, you forced her to kill a bunch of people against her will, and then you stole her son away from her. And so, it's such tragedy that he was raised, and everyone around, it's not just Marco and Philip, like the whole crew, all the people that used to hang with her, even that Sin guy who's trying to be like really nice to Naomi, like, oh, you can be one of us, and blah, blah, blah. And I like how Naomi kind of tells him off and gets in his face. It's like, what do you think is going to happen here? You think things are going to go back to normal? You fucking helped participate in the mass murder of millions, and you did nothing to raise Philip correctly. He's like, oh, blah, blah, shut up. And talking about how the earth, did you forget how we suffered? Now, this is something I kind of touched on in my previous week's episode review, is that they do kind of have the point, which is why I like sort of a dynamic that Earth and Mars did commit a lot of atrocities against the belt. They did sort of let people suffer and die, and had them live in destitution. And he's probably correct that with all these ring gates, all these resources that are now exist through all these other worlds, that they're not going to share them with the belt. I mean, I think he's pretty correct in thinking that. So you do kind of sympathize with them on one hand, but on the other hand, they're mass murderers. And they're supporting a megalomaniac, which is Marco Inaros. So Naomi stashes a knife and is ready to kill Marco. And again, she should have. Well, so many people on this show have a chance to kill Marco, and they don't do it. They regret it later. But she's trying to say, oh, I need to talk to you, and he's like, go away, I'm busy. And because by talking to him, she means killing him with a knife. But she tries to do it anyway, but Philip stops him. At first, I thought that Philip actually saw her with the knife, because it seemed pretty obvious. She had it out and was ready to stab him. But I think the way the show plays is that he totally didn't notice. He just thought that she was in the way or whatever. It looked pretty apparent to me. But Philip lets something slip. He says, well, you should be grateful because I saved your life. Now, this is a subtlety I wonder if most viewers picked up on. I don't know, maybe they didn't pick up on the way what Philip said, but maybe the way Naomi reacted to it, because it made it clear that what do you mean he saved her life? They're going to destroy the Rocinante. And so she kind of pieced it together that they used the same program that she had created that Marco had originally used to destroy the 2 UN ships, that they used that on the Rocinante so that when it powered up its reactor, it would explode. And so she, instead of killing Marco, her new plan is to try to warn the Rocinante at all costs, which makes sense. And so she's able to beat Sin over the head when his guard is down, which I thought that was pretty clever of her. She was pretending to be all friendly with him and then knocked his ass out, stole his comm unit, and called the Rocinante, and managed to warn Holden in just the nick of time, right as he was powering up the reactors. Kind of the TV show kind of countdown, stop it in the middle of when they're counting down, ready to explode. They managed to stop it in just the nick of time. And she also lets Holden know that she's being held captive by Marco, but he still doesn't know where. So he just saved his life in the nick of time, but now the Marco and Philip and all them threw her in the cell, and they're no longer just going to let her roam around the ship freely, and they're really pissed off with her, and she's yelling at them to tell her what happened, and they refuse to, because she's the one who's in the wrong. Anyway, oh my god, those fucking Inaros supporters, god damn it, they really have it coming. Anyway, there was a scene earlier in the episode with a drummer that showed her and her crew and how she's feeling really depressed and really guilty over the attacks that Marco just pulled off because she had a chance to blow him out the airlock and she didn't. And she damn well should feel guilty. This is something I kind of talked about in season 4. And, some people who hadn't read the books I was talking to would be like, oh, I kind of see where she's coming from. But because I read the books, I knew what Marco was going to do next. And so I knew now. I was like, no. This is a bad idea. She should have killed him while she had the chance. Trust me. And I'm sure that's really what she's thinking now. But has her and her crew are like, okay, we can just disappear, do our own thing, and stay out of sight. And Drummer's like, well, actually, no, Marco called us to come visit with him, and so we are going to. I would say Marco's going to try to win her over to his cause because he's basically trying to unite all of the factions of the belt, and she controls a mighty little fleet. And even though that, she had tried to kill him earlier, I think she would still put that aside and try to make peace with her. Whether or not she's going to go for it, we'll have to see. I have a hard time believing that would be the case, especially if she finds out that he's holding Naomi captive. But I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. That's kind of an interesting thread. Anyway, we have Alex and Bobby Draper following this Martian fleet with the Razorback. We see them earlier in the episode watching the news where it's saying that the events of the bombing of the Parliament of Mars and the asteroids hitting Earth and the attack on Tycho Station, if that was all coordinated, then that makes Marco Naros perpetrated the biggest terrorist attack in human history. So yeah, a pretty strong accomplishment. But of course, how did he accomplish this? Well, he had help from these Martian friends who had these technology they're willing to sell. Has Bobby and Alex follow them and find out the what they're selling to the Belters are the ships themselves. Has only one of the ships prepared to leave. All the other ships stay with the Belters, and that's when she realized, holy shit, Marco's buying an entire fleet of Martian warships. We're fucked. And then, speaking of being fucked, one of the ships spot them, and the Razorback makes a run for it. Now, it was really interesting. I like seeing the Razorback go full power because last time we saw the Razorback in action, Alva Sorella was on board, and she, of course, couldn't take the ship at its full force, all the G's that it's capable of doing, so Bobby had to kind of hold back a bit. But with Bobby Draper and Alex, who are both trained to take a lot of G's, we see it go full throttle. And we can imagine, because we see at the end Bobby's nose starts to bleed and how they're both kind of pinned back to the wall. We can imagine just how many. I wish they didn't say how many G's they're pulling. It's got to be 5. I think that's what the ship was capable of. And they said that, they're able to withstand more G's than the Belters could. Like, it's not that the ship couldn't go faster, it's that the Belters couldn't stand as much gravity, as much acceleration as Bobby and Alex could, who were both highly trained for it. But they knew that, so they fired missiles at them. So the only way they could get out of it, the only way they could stop the ship from being destroyed, is to eject their reactor and have the missile destroy that instead, which leaves Bobby and Alex in a very precarious situation, floating in a ship with no reactor. So this is quite a cliffhanger indeed. So yes, it does make me very interested to see where they go with this next. So my rating for Down and Out, not in Beverly Hills, Down and Out in the Belt. My rating for this episode out of 10, I think I'm going to give this an 8. Extremely good. I'm kind of close to giving it a 9. It's like between 8 and 9. But I don't know. I don't think it really screamed spectacular to me, but it was definitely great follow-up. to the previous episodes, the follow-up that we needed. We needed to see how Amos got out of that sticky situation being stuck underground. We needed to see how Naomi was going to react to being held captive by Marco. We needed to see what Holden's reaction was going to be to try to fight back against all this. And I wanted more about Bobby and Alex's storyline about them chasing the Martians, because the only thing we learned is that the Martians are selling Martian warships to the Belters, to Marco Inaros, something that we already knew because we already saw Marco Inaros on the Martian ship, and he even mentioned that he had a whole bunch of Martian ships, so this is something we already knew. I was hoping that they would push this story forward more, but I trust that they're pacing it this way for a reason, and they gotta save some things for the end of the season. But I'm just so damn curious to see them get to this. So anyway, that is it for my review of Down and Out. I shall be back next week to cover the next episode of The Expanse and all the episodes after that. Also, I shall be doing a live discussion video Thursday night. We're doing it an hour early this week, so slightly different time. We're doing it 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. West Coast Time. Thursday night, I'll be joined by Darren from D's Reviews and my sister Alyssa, and we're going to dissect and analyze this episode further. So be sure to check us out live for that, or you can check us out in the archives afterwards. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. Also, be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover The Expanse, as well as covering many other shows like Discovery, all kinds of Star Trek, Breaking Bad, The Outer Limits, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.